The kidnapping. The morning started like any other on the human colony of New Geneva. Marcus Kane watched his 4 children play in the backyard through the kitchen window while sipping his coffee. Sarah, 15 and always responsible, was helping 8-year-old Tommy with his homework under the old oak tree. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Jake was teaching 6-year-old Emma how to throw a proper curveball, their laughter echoing across the peaceful neighborhood. Marcus smiled, remembering how different his life had become. 3 years ago, he had been known throughout the galaxy by a different name entirely. The Coalition called him the Reaper, and his reputation preceded him into every dark corner of space where humanity's enemies lurked. For 12 years, he had hunted the galaxy's most dangerous aliens, those who threatened human colonies, enslaved human children, or committed atrocities against innocent civilians. His ship, the Nemesis, had been equipped with weapons that could crack a moon in half, and his tactical genius had ended 3 separate alien uprisings. But then Maria had died in a transport accident, leaving him alone with 4 grieving children who needed their father more than the galaxy needed its deadliest hunter. Marcus had faked his own death in a spectacular explosion near the Proxima Centauri system, erasing all traces of the Reaper's existence. He had taken his children to this quiet colony world, changed their names, and tried to build a normal life. The galaxy believed Marcus Kane was just another widowed colonist trying to raise his family in peace. The children knew nothing of their father's past. To them, he was simply Dad who worked as a freight coordinator at the spaceport, who helped with homework, who made terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings, and who always seemed to know when they needed a hug. They had no idea that the mild-mannered man who tucked them in each night had once single-handedly destroyed an entire Vorthan battlecruiser to save a human mining colony. As Marcus finished his coffee, the peaceful morning shattered. The sky above their house suddenly darkened as a massive ship descended through the clouds. It was unlike anything in the human fleet, massive, crystalline, and pulsing with an ominous purple light. The Zephyrian royal cruiser had arrived at New Geneva, and Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as he recognized the distinctive design. The Zephyrians were an ancient and powerful race that controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy. They were humanoid in appearance but stood nearly 9 feet tall, with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed like stars. Most importantly, they were slavers who particularly prized human children for their unique neural plasticity and emotional resonance. The Coalition had been fighting a cold war with them for decades, but their technology was so advanced that direct confrontation was nearly impossible. Marcus dropped his coffee cup and ran outside, but he was too late. Beams of light shot down from the ship, and his children were lifted into the air inside shimmering energy fields. Sarah screamed his name, her hands pressed against the barrier that held her captive. Jake was pounding his fists against his prison, shouting threats that would have made Marcus proud under different circumstances. Little Emma was crying, reaching out for her father with tiny hands while Tommy was curled into a ball, overwhelmed by terror. "Dad," Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Help us!" Marcus ran forward, but the beams retracted too quickly, pulling his children up into the belly of the massive ship. He could only watch in helpless rage as the vessel began to rise, taking everything he loved away from him. Other colonists were emerging from their homes, pointing at the sky and talking in confused whispers, but Marcus barely heard them. As the ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, a communication beam shot down and projected a hologram in front of Marcus. The figure that appeared was unmistakably Zephyrian tall, regal, and radiating casual arrogance. This was King Vorthak the Magnificent, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire and one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His glowing eyes looked down at Marcus with the kind of disdain reserved for insects. "Human." Vorthak's voice resonated with authority and contempt. "Your offspring have been selected for the honor of serving in my royal court. They will be educated in the proper ways of civilization and trained to serve their betters. You should be grateful that they will live lives of purpose rather than wasting away on this pathetic mudball you call home." Marcus said nothing, but his hands were clenched into fists so tight that his knuckles had turned white. Every instinct from his years as the Reaper was screaming at him to act, to fight, to destroy this arrogant alien who dared to touch his family. But he was just one man standing on a colony world, facing a ship that could probably glass the entire planet. "Your children showed remarkable spirit during their collection," Vorthak continued, seeming to enjoy the human's obvious distress. The eldest one actually attempted to bargain for the other's freedom. Such loyalty will be useful once it is properly directed. The young male tried to bite my collection officer, admirable aggression that we will channel appropriately. The small female's emotional displays were quite entertaining, and the youngest male's intelligence scores are surprisingly high for a human. They will make excellent additions to my court. The hologram flickered as the ship's engines powered up for the jump to hyperspace. Do not attempt to follow us, human. The Zephyrian Empire spans 1,000 worlds, and my palace lies beyond the reach of your primitive technology. Your children will serve me well, and in time, they will forget they ever had another life. Consider this a gift. I could have simply taken them without explanation. The transmission ended, and the massive ship vanished into hyperspace, taking Marcus's children across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. The other colonists began approaching cautiously, offering condolences and talking about contacting the authorities, but Marcus barely heard them. His mind was already racing, calculating distances, weapon requirements, and tactical approaches. King Vorthak had made one critical error in his arrogance. He had taken the children of the Reaper, and he had no idea what was coming for him. Marcus looked up at the empty sky where his children had disappeared and made a silent promise. He would get them back no matter what it cost him, no matter how many worlds he had to cross, and no matter how many aliens he had to kill along the way. The quiet life of Marcus Kane was over. The Reaper was about to return to the galaxy, and this time it was personal. The awakening of the Reaper. 6 hours after his children disappeared, Marcus stood in the basement of his modest colonial home, staring at a wall that looked perfectly ordinary to anyone else. But behind the false paneling lay secrets that could shake the foundations of galactic politics. He pressed his palm against a hidden scanner, and the wall slid away to reveal a chamber that shouldn't exist on a peaceful colony world. The hidden room was a shrine to humanity's most dangerous son. Weapons that could level city blocks hung on specially designed racks. Armor that had turned aside the claws of Drakmarian assassins sat on display stands. Most importantly, in the center of the room, a single communication device waited patiently on a pedestal. It was designed to penetrate any jamming signal, reach any corner of the galaxy, and connect to a network that most people believed was just a legend. Marcus activated the device, and within moments faces began appearing on the holographic display. These weren't ordinary human faces. Each one belonged to someone who had supposedly died years ago, someone whose funeral Marcus had attended, someone the galaxy had mourned as another hero lost to the endless war against humanity's enemies. But death, as they all knew, was sometimes just another mission parameter. Well, well, came a familiar voice as Commander Sarah Chen's image solidified. Look what the cat dragged in. I thought you were dead, Marcus. We all did. The reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated, Marcus replied, his voice already carrying the edge that had once made alien warlords wet themselves. I need the team, Chen. All of them. More faces appeared on the display. Dr. James Rodriguez, the man who could hack any alien computer system, and had supposedly died in a Catherian prison camp 3 years ago. Captain Lisa Park, whose piloting skills were so legendary that enemy ships would sometimes surrender rather than face her in combat. Officially killed in action during the Battle of Titan's Gate. Sergeant Mike Thompson, a demolitions expert who could make a bomb out of kitchen supplies, and had allegedly been vaporized during a raid on a Vorthak weapons facility. This better be good. Reaper, Dr. Rodriguez said, using the old call sign that none of them had spoken in years. We've all got comfortable new lives to maintain. I'm currently a mild-mannered university professor, and my biggest worry is whether my students are cheating on their exams. Marcus looked directly into the camera, and every member of his old team saw something they recognized. The mask of peaceful domesticity was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating fury that had made the Reaper the most feared human in the galaxy. Zephyrian King Vorthak took my children, Marcus said simply. The effect was immediate. Every face on the display hardened, and the comfortable professors, mechanics, and shop owners they had pretended to be vanished. In their place sat Phantom Squad, the most elite anti-alien special operations team humanity had ever produced. They had been disbanded officially after a mission went wrong, and supposedly killed them all. In reality, they had simply been given new identities and allowed to retire with the understanding that they would never be called upon again unless the situation was truly desperate. How many kids? Captain Park asked, her pilot's mind already calculating flight paths and tactical approaches. 4. Ages 6 to 15. Taken from New Geneva colony 6 hours ago. Vorthak's personal ship, probably headed back to the Zephyrian home system. Sergeant Thompson leaned forward, his scarred face grim. That's deep in enemy territory, Reaper. We're talking about infiltrating the most heavily defended system in their empire. The Zephyrian homeworld has orbital defense platforms that could take out an entire fleet. I don't care if they've got the entire Galactic Armada protecting them, Marcus replied. Those are my children, and I'm bringing them home. With or without you. Commander Chen shook her head. You know it won't be without us, you stubborn bastard. When do we move? 24 hours. I need time to retrieve my ship and gear. Meet at the old staging ground on Proxima Station. We'll need to move fast before Vorthak has time to integrate the kids into whatever sick program he's running. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up data on his personal display. I've been monitoring Zephyrian communications in my spare time, old habits die hard. There's been chatter about a grand ceremony being planned at the Royal Palace. Something about new acquisitions being presented to the noble houses for evaluation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Everyone on the team knew what that meant. Zephyrian nobility had a tradition of evaluating new human slaves in ways that would make hardened soldiers sick. The evaluation process was thorough, invasive, and designed to break the spirit of even the strongest humans. Timeline just moved up, Marcus said. 12 hours. If they're planning a ceremony, we need to hit them before it happens. Captain Park was already running calculations. I can get us there, but it's going to require some creative flying. My ship's been upgraded since the old days, bigger engines, better stealth systems, and a few surprises that even you haven't seen yet. What about weapons? Thompson asked. My personal armory is impressive, but we're talking about going up against Zephyrian energy shields and crystalline armor. We'll need serious firepower. Marcus smiled for the first time since his children had been taken, and it was not a pleasant expression. I've been saving some toys for a special occasion. Trust me, we'll have everything we need to remind the galaxy why they used to whisper the Reaper's name in dark corners. Commander Chen looked around at the assembled faces of her old team. Everyone clear on what we're doing here? This isn't a sanctioned mission. If we're caught, the Coalition will disavow us. If we succeed, we'll probably have to disappear again. This time permanently. The Zephyrians will know that Phantom Squad is back, and every alien empire in the galaxy will be looking for us. I've got 4 kids who need their father, Marcus replied. Nothing else matters. One by one, the team members nodded their agreement. They had all sworn an oath years ago to protect humanity, no matter the cost. The fact that they were officially dead only meant they could operate without restraint. No rules of engagement, no political considerations, no diplomatic consequences. Just 5 of humanity's deadliest warriors unleashed and angry. 12 hours, Commander Chen confirmed. We'll dust off the old playbooks and show these alien bastards why humans are the apex predators of this galaxy. Phantom Squad is back in business. As the communication ended and the faces disappeared, Marcus stood alone in his hidden armory. He began pulling weapons from their cases, each one a masterpiece of human engineering, designed specifically to kill things that thought they were better than humanity. The Reaper was suiting up for war, and somewhere across the galaxy, 4 human children were about to learn that their quiet, ordinary father was anything but ordinary. The hunt was about to begin, and King Vorthak had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in Zephyrian history. The Royal Palace, deep within the crystalline spires of the Zephyrian Royal Palace, Sarah Kane stood protectively in front of her 3 younger siblings as alien guards escorted them through corridors that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The architecture was beautiful and terrifying, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Walls of living crystal shifted colors as they passed, and the ceiling stretched impossibly high, disappearing into shadows that seemed to move on their own. Sarah had spent the 12-hour journey to the Zephyrian homeworld trying to keep her siblings calm while studying everything she could about their captors. She was 15, old enough to understand that their situation was desperate, but not old enough to know that their father had once been the galaxy's most feared alien hunter. To her, Marcus Kane was just Dad, and she had no idea that help was coming. "Stay close to me," she whispered to Jake, Tommy, and Emma as they were led into what appeared to be a holding area. The room was luxuriously appointed with furniture scaled for human-sized occupants. But the walls were clearly reinforced, and Sarah noticed the subtle shimmer of an energy field across the doorway. Jake, 12 and trying hard to be brave, put his arm around 6-year-old Emma, who hadn't stopped crying since they left home. 8-year-old Tommy was clutching a small electronic toy that he had managed to keep hidden during their capture, his quick mind already trying to figure out if it could be used to communicate with the outside world. The Zephyrian guard who had brought them spoke in accented English, his voice carrying the casual arrogance that seemed to be universal among their captors. "You will remain here until the evaluation ceremony. Do not attempt to leave this room. The energy field will deliver a painful but non-lethal shock to any human who tries to pass through it." "What kind of evaluation?" Sarah demanded, stepping forward despite her fear. "What do you want with us?" The guard looked down at her with something that might have been amusement. His pale blue skin seemed to glow in the crystal light, and his star-bright eyes held no warmth whatsoever. "You will be assessed for your potential value to various noble houses. Some of you may be selected as personal attendants, others for more specialized purposes. The young male with the quick mind may find himself in the research divisions. The emotional responses of the small female are quite sought after in certain circles." Sarah felt sick. She understood enough about the galaxy to know what the Zephyrians were really talking about. Slavery, experimentation, worse things that she didn't want to think about. But she was the oldest, and her siblings were looking to her for protection and guidance. "Our father will come for us," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The guard actually laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a winter wind. "Your father is a freight coordinator on a backwater colony. What exactly do you think he can do against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Even if he could somehow reach our home system, which is impossible, this palace is protected by defenses that could destroy entire fleets." After the guard left, the 4 children sat together on the alien furniture, trying to process their situation. The room had no windows, but they could feel the subtle vibration of the massive palace around them. Somewhere in this crystalline maze, other human children were probably suffering fates that Sarah didn't want to imagine. "I miss Dad," Emma said quietly, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "He'll find us," Jake said with the absolute certainty that only a 12-year-old could possess. "Dad always fixes things." Sarah wished she could share her brother's confidence, but she was old enough to understand the impossibilities they faced. They were prisoners on an alien world, billions of miles from home, surrounded by technology that was centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed. Even if their father somehow learned where they were, what could one man do against an entire empire? Tommy had been quiet since their arrival, but now he looked up from the small device he had been tinkering with. "I've been listening to their communications," he said matter-of-factly. "This toy has a basic radio receiver, and I figured out how to boost the signal." Sarah stared at her 8-year-old brother. Sometimes she forgot how brilliant Tommy was, how he could take apart any piece of technology and understand how it worked. "What did you hear?" "They're planning something big for tomorrow night. A ceremony where they're going to show us off to important people. But there's something else they're talking about: increased security. Alerts being sent to patrol ships. Something about potential threats from unknown sources." Before Sarah could ask what that meant, the energy field across their doorway flickered and went out. A Zephyrian official entered, flanked by 2 guards. This alien was clearly more important than the others, wearing elaborate robes that seemed to be woven from light itself. His presence filled the room with an aura of casual, absolute power. "I am Lord Chancellor Zyrek," the alien announced, chief advisor to His Magnificent Majesty, King Vorthak. "I have come to personally inspect the new acquisitions before tomorrow's ceremony." He walked among the children like a farmer examining livestock, making notes on a crystalline tablet that floated beside him. When he reached Sarah, he paused, studying her face with interest. This one has the look of leadership about her. Strong-willed, protective of the others. She would do well in one of the military noble houses, perhaps serving as a tactical advisor once properly trained. His glowing eyes shifted to Jake. "This male shows aggression and physical coordination. Excellent for the arena houses or perhaps personal guard duty." When he reached Emma, his expression softened slightly. "The emotional resonance is strong with this one. Her fear and sadness create quite beautiful patterns in the psychic spectrum. She will be much sought after by the empathic nobles." Finally, he examined Tommy, who stared back with the intense curiosity that had gotten him in trouble since he could walk. Remarkable intelligence for such a young specimen. The research houses will compete fiercely for this one. We're not specimens, Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger and fear. We're children. We have families who love us. Lord Chancellor Zyrek looked at her with the patient expression of an adult explaining something simple to a child. You are whatever His Magnificence declares you to be. Tomorrow you will be presented to the noble houses of the Zephyrian Empire. They will bid on your services and you will be assigned to whichever house values your particular qualities most highly. It is a great honor, one that countless beings throughout the galaxy would envy. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. I suggest you rest well tonight. Tomorrow will be a very important day in your new lives. Try to make a good impression during the ceremony. Your future comfort may depend on it. As the energy field reactivated, sealing them in their prison, Sarah gathered her siblings close. She had to be strong for them. Had to find a way to protect them, even though she felt more helpless than she had ever felt in her life. She thought about her father, probably sitting in their kitchen on New Geneva trying to figure out how to contact the authorities. She thought about their mother who had died 3 years ago and would never know what had happened to her children. Tell us a story, Sarah, Emma whispered. One of the good ones. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to think of something that would give them hope. And somehow she found herself remembering the strange stories their father used to tell them when they were very young. Stories about heroes who traveled between the stars, about humans who stood up to alien empires, about warriors who never gave up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Once upon a time, she began, there was a man who loved his children so much that he would cross the entire galaxy to keep them safe. She didn't know that those stories had been more than just stories. She didn't know that somewhere in the darkness between the stars the most dangerous human alive was coming for them, and she definitely didn't know that by tomorrow night. The Zephyrian Empire would learn why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's apex predators. The ceremony was going to be very different than anyone expected. The infiltration, the modified stealth ship Silent Thunder drifted through the asteroid field at the edge of the Zephyrian home system like a ghost made of metal and determination. Captain Lisa Park's hands moved over the controls with the precision of a surgeon, keeping them invisible to the massive sensor arrays that protected the alien empire's most important world. Behind her, 4 figures that the galaxy believed to be dead prepared for what would either be the greatest rescue mission in human history or a very spectacular suicide. Sensor sweep passing us now, Dr. Rodriguez whispered from his position at the computer station. Their scanners are looking right through us. The new stealth coating is working perfectly. Marcus checked his weapons one final time. The armor he wore was a masterpiece of human engineering, matte black and covered with systems that could counter every known alien technology. On his back hung a rifle that could punch through Zephyrian crystal armor like it was paper. At his side, a pistol that fired rounds designed specifically to disrupt alien neural systems, and in his hands a device that would have made the Coalition's top scientists weep with envy. Everyone clear on the mission? Commander Chen asked, her voice carrying the authority that had once made entire alien battle groups reconsider their life choices. We go in fast, we go in quiet, and we don't leave until every one of Marcus's kids is safe. Sergeant Thompson grinned as he armed the explosive charges that would serve as their calling card. I've been looking forward to this for 3 years. Time to remind these alien bastards why they should leave human children alone. Captain Park brought the ship to a stop in the shadow of a massive asteroid, positioning them perfectly for the approach she had calculated. The palace is on the night side of the planet right now. Their defenses are strong, but they're designed to stop fleets, not a single small ship with serious stealth capabilities. I can get us within 100 kilometers of the target. Marcus stared at the holographic display showing the Zephyrian homeworld. Somewhere on that glittering alien sphere, his children were imprisoned in a palace that was supposed to be impregnable. The Zephyrians had ruled this system for 10,000 years, and their capital had never fallen to any enemy. But then again, they had never faced the Reaper and his team when they had a personal reason for violence. Dr. Rodriguez, what do we know about the palace layout? Marcus asked. The computer expert brought up detailed schematics that he had somehow acquired during their journey. The good news is that human slaves are kept in a specific wing of the palace, designed for their smaller size and different environmental needs. The bad news is that it's in the center of the complex, surrounded by about 15 layers of security. Define security, Thompson said, already calculating how much explosive would be needed for various scenarios. Energy barriers, automated defense turrets, gravity traps, psionic dampeners, and about 3,000 of the best guards in the Zephyrian military. Oh, and the entire area is under constant surveillance by AI systems that can identify threats faster than most people can blink. Marcus smiled, and his team recognized the expression. It was the same look he had worn before single-handedly destroying a Karanti dreadnought. Sounds like a Tuesday. Captain Park began the final approach, her ship sliding through the planet's defensive perimeter like a knife through silk. The Zephyrians had built their defenses to stop conventional attacks, but Phantom Squad had never been conventional. They specialized in the impossible, and tonight they were operating with the kind of motivation that made even impossible things seem easy. Thermal imaging shows the ceremony is already underway, Dr. Rodriguez reported as they approached the palace. Large gathering in the main ceremonial hall. Looks like they're showing off new acquisitions to potential buyers. Marcus felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest. His children were being displayed like merchandise to alien nobles who saw humans as exotic pets at best. Every protective instinct that had driven him to become the Reaper was now focused to a laser-sharp point of fury. Change of plans, he said quietly. We're not just rescuing the kids. We're sending a message. Commander Chen looked at him sharply. Marcus, the mission is to get your children and get out. We can't take on the entire Zephyrian military. We don't have to take on their entire military, Marcus replied, checking the power levels on his weapons. We just have to make sure they understand what happens when they touch human children. Captain Park brought the ship down in a landing bay that her sensors had identified as temporarily empty. The stealth systems would keep them hidden for a while, but once they started moving through the palace, subtlety was going to become impossible. The team moved through the corridors like shadows given deadly purpose. Dr. Rodriguez had hacked into the palace computer systems during their approach, giving them real-time information about guard positions and security protocols. Sergeant Thompson left small surprises at key locations, insurance policies that would help them if they needed to leave in a hurry. The architecture of the Zephyrian palace was designed to intimidate, with soaring ceilings and walls of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. But Marcus and his team had seen enough alien palaces over the years to be immune to psychological warfare. They moved with the efficiency of predators who had found their prey. Human wing is 2 levels down, Dr. Rodriguez whispered through their communication link. I'm reading about 40 human life signs in that area. Your kids should be among them. They descended through the palace using maintenance shafts and service corridors that Dr. Rodriguez's hacking had revealed. The Zephyrians, like most advanced civilizations, had become dependent on their technology and automation. They never expected enemies to use their own systems against them. Guard patrol coming, Captain Park warned from her position at the rear of the group. The 5 Zephyrian guards never knew what hit them. Thompson's stunner took down 3 of them before they could react. Commander Chen's martial arts training, enhanced by years of fighting aliens 3 times her size, handled the 4th. The 5th guard managed to reach for his weapon before Marcus appeared in front of him like death incarnate. The alien's last thought was probably confusion about how a human could move that fast. Bodies secured, Chen reported. But we're on a clock now. Security will notice the missed check-in. They reached the human wing and found it exactly as Dr. Rodriguez had predicted. Dozens of human children and teenagers were imprisoned in luxurious cells, all of them taken from various human colonies and brought here to serve the twisted desires of alien nobility. The sight filled Marcus with a rage that threatened to overwhelm his tactical thinking. But before he could begin the rescue, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Red light bathed the corridors and the sound of running feet echoed from multiple directions. They know we're here, Dr. Rodriguez said, monitoring the security feeds. All available guards are converging on this section. Marcus looked at his team and they looked back at him. They all knew what this meant. The subtle infiltration had become a fighting withdrawal, and they were about to be outnumbered by about 1,000 to 1. Thompson, how much explosive did you bring? Marcus asked. The demolitions expert's grin was visible even through his helmet's faceplate. Enough to redecorate this entire wing. Chen, what's our extraction timeline? Park can have the ship ready for immediate departure, but we need to reach her first. Marcus looked down the corridor toward where his children waited, then back at the approaching sounds of what seemed like half the Zephyrian military. Then I guess it's time to remind these aliens why humans are the apex predators of this galaxy. The battle. The Zephyrian guards expected to find intruders cowering in fear when they reached the human wing of the palace. What they found instead was a nightmare made flesh. As 5 of humanity's deadliest warriors turned the crystalline corridors into a killing field that would be talked about in hushed whispers for generations. Marcus Kane moved through the alien soldiers like a force of nature. His rifle spoke with mechanical precision, each shot finding its target despite the Zephyrians' advanced armor and energy shields. The weapon had been designed specifically for this moment, firing rounds that resonated at the exact frequency needed to shatter Zephyrian crystal technology. Armor that had protected alien warriors for centuries cracked like glass under his assault. "Thompson, bring down that support column," Commander Chen shouted as she dove behind cover, her own weapon spitting death at the advancing guards. The demolitions expert's charges turned the elegant palace architecture into a weapon. Crystalline pillars collapsed in precisely calculated sequences, creating choke points that forced the Zephyrians to advance through narrow passages, where their numerical superiority became meaningless. "Dr. Rodriguez, we need those cell doors open now," Marcus called out as he reloaded behind the cover of a fallen crystal beam. "Working on it," the computer expert replied, his fingers flying over his portable hacking device. "Their security system is more complex than I expected, but I'm breaking through their encryption." Captain Park had positioned herself at the far end of the corridor, her sniper rifle picking off any Zephyrian who tried to flank their position. Her shots were poetry in motion, each bullet finding the tiny gaps in alien armor with the precision that had made her legendary throughout the galaxy. The battle was intense but brief. The Zephyrians had numbers and technology, but they had never faced anything like Phantom Squad operating with personal motivation. Within minutes, the corridor was filled with the bodies of alien guards, and the surviving Zephyrians were retreating to regroup. "Doors are open," Dr. Rodriguez announced as the energy field sealing the human prisoners flickered and died. Marcus ran toward the cell where his children were imprisoned, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. The door slid open and 4 familiar faces looked up at him with expressions of shock, relief, and confusion. "Dad?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "How did you get here?" Marcus knelt down and gathered all 4 of his children into his arms, feeling tears that he hadn't shed in years threatening to overflow. "I told you I'd always protect you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Jake was staring at his father's armor and weapons with wide eyes. "Dad, you look like one of those soldiers from the war movies. Are you a real soldier?" Tommy asked, his scientific mind already trying to process what he was seeing. Emma just clung to her father, not caring about explanations or mysteries. All that mattered was that he was here and she was safe, but there was no time for proper reunions. More alarms were sounding throughout the palace, and the sound of approaching reinforcements echoed through the corridors. "We need to move," Commander Chen said, appearing beside them. "The entire palace guard is mobilizing, and I'm reading at least 3 companies of heavy assault troops heading this way." "What about the other children?" Sarah asked, looking at the dozens of other young humans who were emerging from their cells. Marcus looked at the frightened faces surrounding them, and his jaw tightened with resolve. "We're taking all of them." "Marcus," Captain Park's voice crackled through the communication link. "That's nearly 40 kids. The ship can carry them, but it's going to be tight. And we'll be slow." "Then we make sure nothing follows us," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the cold certainty that had once made alien warlords surrender, rather than face him. Sergeant Thompson's demolition charges had done more than create tactical advantages. They had also revealed the palace's structural weaknesses, and his expert eye was already calculating how much explosive would be needed to bring down entire sections of the building. "I can give us a clear path to the landing bay," he said, "but it's going to require some aggressive interior decorating." The team began moving through the palace, herding nearly 40 rescued human children, while fighting a running battle with increasingly desperate Zephyrian forces. The aliens were beginning to understand that they weren't dealing with ordinary intruders. These humans moved with a coordination and lethality that spoke of years of training and actual combat experience. As they fought their way toward the surface, more alarms began sounding throughout the palace. But these weren't security alerts. These were emergency evacuation warnings. "What did you do, Thompson?" Dr. Rodriguez asked as they reached a major intersection. I may have accidentally damaged some critical support structures, the demolitions expert replied with completely artificial innocence. This section of the palace is going to be experiencing some architectural adjustments in about 10 minutes. Behind them, they could hear the sound of crystal and metal beginning to stress and crack as the massive building started to shift on its foundations. The Zephyrians had built their palace to last for millennia, but they had never planned for human ingenuity applied with malicious intent. The ceremony hall is directly above us, Dr. Rodriguez reported, checking his scans of the building. King Vorthak and about 300 of the most important nobles in the Zephyrian Empire are attending the presentation of new human slaves. Marcus looked up at the ceiling, his mind calculating angles and structural integrity. How many of those nobles are directly involved in the slave trade? Marcus, Commander Chen warned, recognizing the expression on his face. Don't even think about it. All of them, he replied matter-of-factly. Thompson, do you have enough explosive to bring down the ceremony hall? Are you seriously asking me to drop the roof on the most powerful aliens in the Zephyrian Empire? Marcus looked at the scared faces of the human children they were rescuing, then at his own 4 children who had been minutes away from being sold to alien monsters. Yes, Thompson's grin was visible through his helmet. I've been saving something special for just such an occasion. The explosion that followed could be heard across half the continent. The grand ceremony hall, where King Vorthak was preparing to auction off human children to the highest bidders, collapsed in a spectacular display of falling crystal and twisted metal. The most powerful figures in the Zephyrian Empire found themselves buried under the rubble of their own arrogance as alarm screamed throughout the dying palace and emergency crews rushed to dig out their buried leaders. 5 humans and 40 rescued children reached the landing bay where Captain Park had the ship ready for immediate departure. Everyone aboard, she shouted over the sounds of the collapsing building. We've got about 30 seconds before the entire palace comes down. The ship lifted off just as the final support structures gave way, and the crystalline palace that had stood for centuries as a symbol of Zephyrian power and permanence crashed down in a cloud of dust and debris. As they climbed toward space, Marcus looked back at the destruction and felt a grim satisfaction. The galaxy's most powerful slave traders had just learned that human children were not merchandise to be bought and sold. They were family, and family was something that humans would kill and die for. King Vorthak, assuming he had survived the collapse, was about to discover just how personal this war had become. The Reckoning. 3 weeks after the destruction of the Zephyrian royal palace, the galaxy was still trying to process what had happened. The most powerful alien empire in known space was in chaos. King Vorthak had survived the collapse, but barely, and half of his noble court lay buried under tons of crystalline rubble. More importantly, the rescue of 40 human children from the heart of their most secure facility had sent shockwaves through every alien civilization that had ever considered humans to be easy. Marcus sat in his kitchen on New Geneva, watching his 4 children eat breakfast like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sarah was helping Emma with her homework. Jake was telling Tommy about a new sport he wanted to try. The sounds of ordinary family life filled the modest colonial home, and to any outside observer, the Kane family looked perfectly peaceful. But 3 weeks had changed everything. His children now knew that their father wasn't just a freight coordinator. They had seen him in full combat armor, had watched him move through alien enemies like death incarnate, had witnessed him orchestrate the rescue of 40 children and the destruction of a palace that was supposed to be impregnable. Dad, Sarah said as she finished helping Emma, are you really the Reaper? Marcus looked up from his coffee and met his daughter's eyes. She was 15, old enough to understand the implications of what she had learned, old enough to handle the truth that he had been hiding from them for 3 years. I was, he said simply. For 12 years I hunted the galaxy's worst monsters, aliens who enslaved human children, who attacked our colonies, who thought humanity was weak enough to prey upon. I stopped when your mother died because you needed a father more than the galaxy needed another soldier. But you came for us, Jake said, his 12-year-old mind still trying to process everything he had seen. I will always come for you, Marcus replied. No matter where you are, no matter what stands in my way. You are my children, and I will protect you with everything I have. Tommy looked up from his breakfast, his 8-year-old genius mind asking the question that adults would have been afraid to voice. Are the bad aliens going to come back for us? Marcus smiled. and it was the expression that would have made alien warlords reconsider their life choices. Let me tell you about the messages I've been receiving. He activated a holographic display that showed communications from across the galaxy. Message after message from alien governments, crime syndicates, and slave traders, all saying essentially the same thing. They had no idea that the Reaper was still alive. They had no idea that Phantom Squad had returned from the dead. And they definitely had no idea that humanity's deadliest warrior was now operating with personal motivation rather than just professional duty. The Drakmarian Syndicate has announced that they're discontinuing all operations involving human targets, Marcus said, scrolling through the messages. The Karanti Empire has issued a formal apology for past aggression and is requesting a non-aggression pact. 3 different alien governments have sent gifts. But the most important message was from King Vorthak himself. The Zephyrian ruler, still recovering from his injuries, had sent a transmission that was being broadcast throughout alien space as a warning to any who might consider following his example. The hologram showed the alien king, his regal bearing somewhat diminished by the medical equipment surrounding him. His pale blue skin was marked with scars from the palace collapse, and his star-bright eyes held a wariness that hadn't been there before. To all who receive this message, Vorthak's voice carried across the kitchen, know that the human known as the Reaper lives. His death was a deception, his retirement a lie. He and his team have returned from whatever dark corner of space they were hiding in, and they are more dangerous than ever before. The king paused, and when he continued, there was something almost like respect in his voice. The Zephyrian Empire formally renounces all claims to human slaves. Any human currently held by our people will be returned immediately to Coalition space. We have learned that humans are not the primitive species we believed them to be. They are apex predators whose protective instincts, when aroused, make them the most dangerous force in the known galaxy. Furthermore, Vorthak continued, let it be known to all civilizations that human children are not to be touched, taken, or harmed. The consequences of such actions have been made clear. The Reaper does not negotiate, does not accept surrender, and does not show mercy to those who threaten human families. Consider this a warning that we paid for with the blood of our nobility and the destruction of our greatest palace. The transmission ended, and the kitchen fell silent except for the normal sounds of a family breakfast. Marcus looked at his children. These 4 young humans who had inadvertently reminded the galaxy why their species had earned its reputation as the ultimate survivors. So no, he said to Tommy, the bad aliens are not going to come back for us. They're too smart for that now. Emma looked up from her breakfast, syrup on her cheek and innocence in her eyes. Are you going to be the Reaper again? Marcus considered the question carefully. The galaxy was full of monsters who preyed on the weak and innocent. There were still alien empires that thought humans were nothing more than primitives to be exploited. And somewhere out there, human children were probably still being held against their will by creatures who thought themselves superior. Only when I have to be, he said finally. When someone threatens our family or other human families, the Reaper is retired, but he's not dead. He's just waiting. Sarah nodded, understanding more than her siblings about the balance their father was trying to maintain. Will you teach us how to protect ourselves? Marcus looked at his eldest daughter, seeing in her the same fierce protectiveness that had driven him to become the Reaper in the first place. Some things. Basic self-defense, situational awareness, emergency procedures, but I hope you never need to use them. But if we do need them, Jake asked. Then you'll have them, Marcus promised, and you'll have me. As his children finished breakfast and prepared for school, Marcus cleaned up the kitchen and thought about the future. Phantom Squad was officially disbanded again. His teammates had returned to their cover identities, and the Reaper was once more a ghost story that alien mothers used to frighten their children. But the galaxy was different now. The rescue of 40 human children from the heart of the Zephyrian Empire had reminded everyone that humanity was not to be underestimated. The destruction of a supposedly impregnable palace had shown that human ingenuity and determination could overcome any defense. And the fact that 5 supposedly dead humans had appeared from nowhere, accomplished the impossible, and vanished again had made every alien government reconsider their policies toward human civilians. The message was clear. Humans were not prey. They were predators who had temporarily chosen to be peaceful, and anyone who forgot that distinction did so at their own peril. As he watched his children walk to school, laughing and playing like normal kids, Marcus smiled. They could have their ordinary childhood. They could grow up in peace, safe in the knowledge that their father would always be there to protect them. And somewhere in the dark corners of the galaxy, alien monsters would whisper stories about the Reaper and remember why it was a very bad idea to threaten human families. The galaxy's apex predator was sleeping, but he was never truly gone. Some lessons, after all, needed to be permanent.